My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm 69 years old, and I will never forget the sound of my daughter-in-law's voice the second before my body hit the water. "Say hi to the sharks," she whispered, soft, almost playful, right before her hands pressed into my back. I didn't even have time to scream. The cold hit me first, a violent slap that stole every bit of air from my lungs. One moment, sunlight was glinting off the polished rails of our family yacht. The next, I was weightless, swallowed by the Atlantic. The salt burned my eyes, the emerald silk of my dress tangled around my legs, and when I looked up through the churning blue, all I saw were two silhouettes leaning over the edge. My son Marcus and his wife Sophia. Marcus didn't reach for me. He didn't shout or throw a line. He just stood there, watching. Then I saw it, the faintest curve of a smile. The kind that chills a mother's soul because you know your own child has already decided you're expendable. Their plan was perfect, or so they thought. An accident at sea, the grieving son with power of attorney, the fragile widow losing her mind in her later years. All the paperwork already signed, every account already accessible. $3 billion, tied neatly in a bow of betrayal. I remember sinking, staring at the fading light above me, and thinking, so this is how it ends? Not in sickness, not in sleep, but by the hands of the people I loved most. My husband James built our empire from nothing. For 47 years, we worked side by side, turning a garage dream into a global tech powerhouse. And now, his legacy, our life, was being stolen, not by strangers, but by our own blood. The water filled my ears, my lungs screaming for air. But I wasn't ready to die. Not like this. I kicked off my shoes, clawed toward the surface, gasping, fighting the cold that wanted to drag me back down. And as I broke through, coughing, choking, blinking through the waves, I watched that yacht grow smaller and smaller on the horizon. My son never turned around. Sophia lifted her phone instead, probably filming the performance of their lives. They thought I was gone. They thought I'd never be found. They thought their problem was solved, but the universe has a strange sense of justice. Because hours later, when they came home to my estate, dry clothes, fake tears, rehearsed shock, they found something they never expected. Me, alive, sitting in my favorite armchair, a cup of tea in my hand, waiting. Before I tell you how a beautiful morning turned into attempted murder, and how I made sure they'd pay for every second I spent gasping for life in that ocean, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share with you will change how you think about family forever. Before the ocean tried to take me, my life looked like a polished photograph, one of those glossy magazine spreads where the light hits just right and the world seems flawless. James and I were college sweethearts who turned grit into a company, and the company into a fortune. He could solder a circuit board with one hand and sue the frightened investor with the other. I managed the details, the people, the endless calendar of meetings and charity galas. Together, we built something that outlived 2 economic downturns and 1,000 sleepless nights. We called it Morrison Technologies. Others called it a miracle. We called it work. When James died 3 years ago, it felt like the house had lost its heartbeat. The rooms were the same, the study with the tall windows, the kitchen where he carved the roast on Sundays, but the warmth he brought was gone. Grief is a strange organizer. It makes you take inventory of what matters and what doesn't. For me, what mattered was simple. James's laugh, the way his hand fit into mine, the quiet certainty that we were a team. And then there was the money, a tool, not a trophy, a resource that could do good if used carefully. Marcus was a bright boy. He loved model rockets and had a knack for numbers. I pushed him toward the best schools because that's what parents do when they believe in a child. But somewhere between private tutors and boarding school, the calculation in his eyes changed. I'd always excused it. He's ambitious, I'd say. He wants to do more than I ever did. I paid for his education because I believed in him. When he married Sophia 5 years ago, I let my guard down in the softest way. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who smiles like sunshine and leaves a room smelling like a new handbag. I welcomed her as mothers do, a little hopeful that my son's happiness would be contagious. At first, she did everything a daughter-in-law should. Brought casseroles, asked for my recipes, laughed at my old jokes. She learned our rhythms, the little ways we honored James on his birthday, the exact temperature we liked the tea. I thought she was wonderful. I wanted to be a grandmother to her children, to keep building the family that James and I had imagined. The changes were small at first, a redirected bank statement here, an offhand suggestion about simplifying trusts there. "Mom," Marcus would say in that soft voice he uses when he wants something, "we've been talking about your estate. Maybe we should consolidate accounts. It would be easier for everyone." And Sophia, always leaning in with that practiced concern, would add, "You've had a rough time with your knee surgery. It might be good to make things simpler." They framed it as care. They framed it as efficiency. I believed I was being prudent. I signed a few papers the first year after James died, medical releases, a temporary power of attorney for a procedure. It felt sensible. It was sensible until it wasn't. The calls started to go to voicemail. My financial advisor took unexpected leave. Meetings were scheduled without me. I'd come home to find the study open. James's desk, a chaos of folders I didn't recognize. Once, I found a legal pad with a timeline. Accelerate access to assets Q3. My heart sank. But I crafted explanations for every suspicion. I told myself that grief made me paranoid, that I was protecting my son from my fears. In the evenings, I'd sit alone in the library, hands folded over a hot cup of tea, and remember the life James and I built, the boardrooms, the small victories, the nights we stayed up drafting vision after vision. I thought that love and history would inoculate us against greed. I never imagined the people closest to me would learn to treat my heart like an account to be withdrawn from. When Marcus began to suggest that I simplify my affairs, when Sophia started to speak in the calm, clinical tones of someone reading a script, I should have seen the truth. Instead, I chose hope over suspicion. I wanted my son back. I wanted the smiling family dinners we used to have. I wanted, desperately, to believe in them. I never once imagined I would have to fight for my life against my own blood. It was a Tuesday morning in early June, the kind of morning that pretends to be gentle. The air over Martha's Vineyard was crisp and bright, the tide humming like a lullaby. I was sitting in the garden, pruning James's roses, when the phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. I hadn't seen that name light up my phone in weeks. My heart jumped before I could stop it. For a second, I forgot the distance between us. "Mom," he said, his voice warm, practiced. "Sophia and I have been talking. You've been through so much lately, your surgery, your recovery. We want to celebrate you." Celebrate. That word curled in my stomach like a bad oyster. "Celebrate what, exactly?" I asked. "Your recovery," he replied easily. "We bought a new yacht, thought it'd be the perfect time to take you out for a family cruise. Just the three of us, like old times. It should have sounded beautiful. Instead, it sounded rehearsed. Still, hope has a way of drowning out instinct. My heart whispered that maybe this was a peace offering, a bridge back to the son I'd raised. So I said yes. I wanted my boy back. I spent the next day preparing like it was a holiday. I wore my emerald dress, the one James always said made my eyes look alive. I even took a bottle of his favorite champagne from the cellar, a 1982 vintage we'd been saving for something special. I told myself this was it, the day we became a family again. When I arrived at the marina, I saw the yacht first. White, gleaming, and grotesquely large. The name painted on its hull made my breath catch Catherine's dream. My dream, apparently, was now something they'd bought with my money. Sophia was waiting at the dock in a white sundress, sunglasses perched like armor. Her kiss on my cheek was quick and cold, like a receipt handed over the counter. Marcus hugged me, stiffly, his cologne sharp and foreign. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We wanted this to be perfect for you, Mom." The yacht was everything money could buy: Italian leather seats, chilled champagne, and a panoramic view of the ocean. They even had my favorite music playing softly, as if to lull me into comfort. For a while, it worked. We laughed forced laughter, but laughter nonetheless. The sky was a flawless blue, the coastline shrinking behind us. But then I noticed something strange. No other boats, no other sounds, just open water and endless horizon. Marcus kept pouring me champagne, his hand trembling slightly each time he refilled my glass. Sophia scrolled through her phone, smiling faintly, tilting it toward me once or twice to take selfies. I thought she wanted to capture a memory. I didn't realize she was capturing evidence. Somewhere between the second and third glass, the air shifted. A cold wind cut through the warm day. The light seemed harsher. The laughter stopped coming so easily. I didn't know it yet, but that yacht wasn't a celebration. It was a stage, and I was the performance. It started with the little things, the way Marcus avoided my eyes when he spoke, the way Sophia's smile froze for a split second too long whenever I asked a question. The sun was bright overhead, but something colder settled in my chest. The conversation had turned from idle chatter to paperwork. Always paperwork. "Mom," Marcus said, leaning against the polished mahogany railing. "You've done an incredible job managing everything since Dad passed. But we've been thinking, maybe it's time to simplify things." "Simplify?" I repeated, my hand tightening on the stem of my glass. "Yeah," he said casually. "The trust structure is complicated. All those accounts, offshore holdings, the board decisions. It's a lot for one person, especially with your surgery and recovery." Sophia chimed in smoothly, her voice honeyed but hollow. "We just want to protect you, Catherine. The last thing we'd want is for someone to take advantage of you." She reached out, touching my arm lightly. Her nails, perfect, white-tipped, dug in just enough for me to feel control disguised as concern. That's when I noticed the folder on the table, thick, labeled with my name in neat print. I hadn't seen it before. "What's that?" I asked. Sophia hesitated for a heartbeat too long. "Oh, just some estate planning notes. Marcus and I have been helping your lawyer organize everything." "My lawyer?" "Patricia Chen." I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Last I tried, her assistant said she was unavailable indefinitely. My financial advisor had gone silent around the same time. It hit me then. Faint but undeniable, something was deeply wrong. Marcus poured me another drink, his hand steady now. Too steady. "You trust me, don't you, Mom?" The question was a dagger disguised as a hug. "Of course," I said quietly, lying to keep the peace. Sophia lifted her phone again, pretending to take a picture of the ocean. But her lens was angled toward me, my hands around the glass, my slurred refusal to drink more champagne, the exhaustion on my face. She was documenting it, building an image of incompetence, the perfect prop for their narrative. Elderly widow losing her grip on reality. I forced a smile, the kind a mother uses when her instincts scream danger but her heart refuses to believe it. "You've gone to a lot of trouble for me," I said. Marcus smiled faintly. "You deserve it." When he turned away, I saw it papers peeking out of the folder. One line visible through the transparent sleeve. Cognitive Decline Assessment, Catherine Morrison, dated 3/22. I had never seen that document in my life. Sophia caught me looking and quickly closed the folder. "Don't worry about the boring stuff," she said, her voice sweet and sharp all at once. "Just enjoy the trip." But the air was heavy now. Every sound, the creak of the deck, the The slap of waves seemed to whisper a warning. That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't a family outing. It was an audit of my worth, my sanity, my assets, my existence. And the verdict had already been decided. The world has a way of going quiet right before it shatters. The wind slows, the water smooths out, and even the gulls seem to hold their breath. That's how it was in the seconds before my son tried to erase me from existence. I had asked, softly, for us to turn back. "Marcus, I'm getting tired," I said, setting my empty glass down. "Let's go home." He didn't even look at me. His jaw tightened, and when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, too calm. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mother." Sophia rose from her seat like a dancer hitting her mark, phone still in hand, still filming. "You've been showing signs of decline, Catherine. It's been getting worse. Forgetting things. Getting confused." I stared at her. "What on earth are you talking about?" Marcus turned then, holding a folder, that same folder. He flipped it open on the table, the papers pinned by a silver pen. "We've spoken to professionals," he said. "Dr. Patterson, Dr. Lee. They agree you can't handle your affairs anymore. You need oversight." I skimmed the page. My name, my birth date. Words like diminished capacity and cognitive impairment. Fake signatures from doctors I'd never met. My stomach twisted. "You forged these," I whispered. Sophia smiled thinly. "We prepared them." The wind picked up. The yacht swayed gently, mocking the trembling in my hands. "You're not serious," I said. "You can't mean to," Marcus interrupted, his voice slicing through the salt air. "Sign them, Mother. Everything transfers into a joint trust. Sophia and I will handle your accounts, your properties, everything. It's for your protection." I pushed the papers away. Over my dead body. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something human in his eyes, a flicker of the little boy who used to climb into my lap after nightmares. But it vanished, replaced by something hollow and mechanical. Sophia moved closer. "That can be arranged," she murmured. The words barely registered before I felt her hand brush my shoulder. Her perfume, sweet and suffocating, filled my lungs. She leaned close, her lips by my ear. "Say hi to the sharks, Catherine." A shove. Hard. Sudden. My body tipped forward, the deck vanishing beneath my feet. I remember the flash of sky, the scream that never left my throat, and then impact. The ocean hit like concrete. My chest seized, lungs burning. The champagne in my blood made everything slower, heavier. I clawed toward the surface, legs tangled in silk. When I finally broke through, gasping, I heard Marcus shouting above me. "Mom! Mom!" It sounded panicked, desperate, until I realized it was for show. The yacht engine roared. White water sprayed my face. I saw them shrinking on the horizon, Marcus's still figure, Sophia's raised phone. They were leaving. They hadn't even thrown a life ring. The cold bit into my bones, but somewhere inside me, something colder ignited a vow, sharp and quiet. "You will not get away with this." Then I started swimming. Cold water has a voice. It screams in your ears, claws at your lungs, and tells you to stop fighting. I heard it that day, whispering, "Let go. Catherine, let go." But something louder pushed back James's voice, the memory of his laugh, the way he'd squeeze my hand and say, "You're stronger than you think." I kicked until my legs burned. Every movement felt like dragging a mountain through molasses. My dress clung to me like a shroud, heavy and merciless. The sky above was a smear of silver and white, the yacht a shrinking ghost on the horizon. My arms went numb, my vision blurred. I thought, this is it. This is where my story ends. But then a sound. A motor. Faint but real. I turned my head and saw it. A small fishing boat not far off, bobbing on the waves. I summoned the last ounce of strength in me and screamed. My voice cracked and disappeared into the wind. I screamed again, louder, until the man on deck turned. He was sun-browned, middle-aged, with a weather-beaten face and eyes that saw too much of the sea. "Dios mío!" he shouted, cutting the engine. Without hesitation, he dove into the water. Moments later, strong hands grabbed my arm, hauling me toward safety. He and a younger man, his grandson, maybe 16, dragged me over the side and laid me on the deck. I was shivering violently, coughing up salt water, gasping for breath. "Easy, Signora. Easy," the man said, wrapping me in a blanket that smelled of diesel and fish. "You're safe now." His name was Miguel Santos. The boy was Carlos. They spoke with soft Spanish accents, voices kind and solid like anchors. "What happened?" Miguel asked. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. "How do you tell a stranger that your own son tried to murder you?" "An accident," I croaked. "I fell off a yacht." Carlos frowned. "We saw that boat. They didn't stop." Miguel's eyes met mine steady, knowing. He reached for the radio. "We'll call the Coast Guard." "Wait." My hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Please, don't." He froze. "No police?" "Not yet," I said. My voice was weak, but the conviction in it startled even me. "If they think I'm dead, I can find out why." Miguel studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I see. Someone tried to kill you." Tears stung my eyes, not from fear, but from the bitter taste of truth. "Yes." He stood, turned off the radio, and said quietly, "Then we didn't find you." They took me to a small cove, a hidden dock behind a weathered cottage. There, Miguel's wife Rosa wrapped me in towels and brewed coffee that tasted like smoke and mercy. For the first time since the shove, I let myself breathe. Sophia and Marcus believed I was gone. The world would soon believe it too. But the woman they tried to drown hadn't died. She'd been reborn with fire in her veins. Rosa's cottage sat on the edge of the world. A slanted little house with chipped blue shutters and the smell of sea salt baked into its walls. From its window, you could see the Atlantic stretching endlessly, gray and endless, like it was daring me to forget what it had tried to do. Rosa didn't ask many questions. Miguel had told her everything with one look. She just pressed a mug of strong coffee into my hands and said, "Drink. You look like death, but you're not it. That means you've got work to do." I stayed there for 3 days, long enough for the world to announce my death. The television played the story over and over. Tragic accident at sea. Tech widow Catherine Morrison lost in a boating mishap. Son and daughter-in-law devastated. I watched them cry on screen. Sophia's voice breaking perfectly for the cameras. Marcus clutching her hand, both dressed in black before they'd even recovered my body. "She wasn't herself these past few months," Marcus said softly. "The memory lapses were getting worse. We tried to help." I almost laughed. "My son, the actor, my murderer." Rosa turned the TV off. "What will you do now?" she asked. I looked at my trembling hands, at the veins that told too many stories. "I'm going to let them bury me," I said. "And then, I'm going to bury them." Miguel nodded, as if vengeance was a language he understood well. He offered to help. "My nephew, Javier, private investigator. Used to be police. You'll need someone like him." That night, Miguel took my soaked phone and tossed it into the sea. "Dead women don't get phone calls," he said simply. Then he gave me a burner phone. One contact. Javier Santos. He arrived 2 days later. Mid-30s. Tall, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You want to investigate your own murder?" he asked as he set down his duffel bag full of equipment. "Yes," I said. "And I want to make them pay for every lie they told." He grinned. "Then you came to the right man." We worked from Rosa's kitchen table, laptop open, papers spread across the wood. Javier traced financial documents, followed digital trails, and connected names. They've been siphoning your money for months, he told me. Fake accounts, forged withdrawals, all routed through your lawyer, Patricia Chen. Patricia, my trusted counsel for 10 years, the woman who'd handled James's estate. I felt my stomach drop. She's in on it? Worse, Javier said. She's done this before. He slid a file across the table, photos of other elderly clients, all wealthy, all accidentally deceased. I felt the room tilt. This wasn't just a family betrayal. It was an operation. When I finally went to bed that night, I lay awake, listening to the waves outside. They sounded less like an ocean and more like breathing a reminder that I was alive. And that meant I still had power. They'd written my obituary, held my funeral, spent my money. They'd forgotten one thing. Dead women can still haunt you. I never thought I'd live to see my own funeral. But there I was, alive and invisible, watching through binoculars from a black sedan parked at the edge of my estate. Javier sat beside me, camera in hand, recording everything. "You sure you want to see this?" he asked quietly. "I have to," I whispered. "I need to know how good they are at pretending." It was a perfect spring morning, too. Perfect, like the world was mocking me. The garden James and I planted was in full bloom, white roses nodding gently in the breeze. Rows of chairs faced a mahogany coffin that was, of course, empty. Around it, the people who had once filled my life, board members, charity partners, old friends, sat with bowed heads, and at the front stood Marcus and Sophia, dressed in immaculate black. Sophia dabbed at her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Marcus spoke with trembling sincerity. "My mother was complicated," he said, voice thick with emotion. "We tried to help her, but her mind, she wasn't the same after my father passed. We hope she's found peace." A ripple of sympathy went through the crowd. Even the pastor's face softened. The performance was flawless. I could almost applaud. But then I saw my true friends, Eleanor, Susan, and Margaret, clutching each other, crying real tears. They hadn't believed the lies. I wanted to step out, to tell them I was alive, to end their grief. But Javier's hand on my arm stopped me. "Not yet," he said. "The more they believe you're gone, the deeper they'll dig their own graves." After the service, people gathered for the reception inside the mansion. Through the camera lens, I watched Marcus shake hands, accept condolences, even smile. The vultures had inherited their prey. But there was something else. I noticed certain absences. Patricia Chen, my lawyer, nowhere to be seen. Robert Wellington, my financial advisor, missing. David Price, my accountant, absent. The 3 people who handled my money and papers. "They're hiding," I murmured, "because they know the truth." Javier zoomed in on Marcus and Sophia near the entrance. "Look at their body language," he said. "They're nervous. They keep checking the time." He was right. Sophia glanced at her watch, whispered something to Marcus, and the two slipped away before the guests had even finished dessert. We followed them from a distance past the gates, down the private road, to a glass-walled office building downtown. Patricia Chen's name gleamed in silver letters above the door. Sophia waited in the car while Marcus went inside. He carried a leather briefcase, the same one I'd bought him for his 30th birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. When he came back out, Javier snapped a photo through the windshield. Patricia appeared at the doorway, handing him a manila envelope. Marcus kissed her cheek before leaving. I felt something dark settle in my chest. "They didn't just kill me for the money," I said softly. "They were working with her." Javier lowered the camera, eyes cold. "Then Patricia Chen just signed her own death warrant." I looked back at the mansion, where the guests still laughed and toasted to my memory. My son had buried me in name and spirit. Now it was my turn to return the favor, only mine would be real. Night had settled over the vineyard by the time we returned to Rosa's cottage. The waves crashed hard against the rocks, as if the sea itself was restless, still hungry for what it hadn't finished. I sat by the window with a cup of black coffee, staring at the reflection of a woman I barely recognized. My hair was still damp from the shower, silver strands wild around my face. The skin beneath my eyes had darkened into bruised crescents. I looked like a ghost, and maybe I was one now. "Are you sure about this?" Javier asked from across the table. His laptop glowed between us, screens full of data, photographs, bank transfers. "Once we move, there's no going back." I didn't hesitate. "They started this war, I'm just finishing it." Javier nodded. "Then we'll need proof, something that ties Patricia to the murders and your son to the theft." He slid a folder toward me. Inside were printouts of emails intercepted from Patricia's firm. Each message was cold, clinical, horrifyingly efficient. Patient exhibits worsening confusion. Recommend immediate execution of estate transfer. Risk of exposure, minimal. I swallowed hard. "How many others?" "Too many," he said. "This isn't just about you, Catherine. It's a network elderly clients with large estates, all dying accidentally within months of their signatures being notarized. Patricia's orchestrating it." I stared at the papers until the letters blurred. Every instinct in me burned not just for revenge, but for justice. "Then let's give her a taste of her own medicine," I whispered. That night, I wrote a letter. My handwriting was shaky but deliberate. "Dear Marcus and Sophia, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We need to have a conversation about theft, murder, and family. Love, mother." The next morning, Javier had it couriered directly to my estate. I waited, pacing like a caged animal, until the footage came in from the hidden cameras we'd planted days earlier. When Marcus opened that letter, his face drained of color. "She's alive!" he stammered. "I don't know how, but she's alive!" Sophia's response was pure panic. She tore through the living room, knocking over vases, screaming, "She's dead, Marcus! She's dead!" Within an hour, Patricia Chen arrived at the house, her usual composure cracking like porcelain. "This is a problem," she said, her voice tight. "If she's talking, we're all exposed. Everything falls apart." Marcus ran a trembling hand through his hair. "What do we do?" Patricia's answer was as smooth as ice. "We fix it permanently this time." When Javier replayed that footage for me, my hands shook not from fear, but from fury. They had already tried to kill me once. Now they were going to try again. "Good," I said quietly, staring out at the horizon. "Let them come." Javier turned to me, startled. "Catherine." I looked back at him, calm, resolute. "They think they're hunting a widow." A small, cold smile crossed my lips. "But they're about to meet a storm." They brought them through the house like animals. Handcuffs glinting under chandelier light, voices barking orders, the world I knew cracking open and spilling out into a chaos I had already rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. Agent Martinez moved with a quiet authority that made the room feel small and inevitable. Javier's camera crew hummed softly in the corner, catching every stunned expression, every ugly face, my son's white and small. Sophia's mascara streaking down her cheeks. Patricia's mouth was a thin line. The cleaner looked like any man who's decided to stop being alive on someone else's schedule. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one with the faded leather and the dent where James used to rest his knee, and watched them take him away. It felt almost theatrical, like the final act of a play I'd been forced to direct. I had rehearsed this moment for months, practiced the coolness, the precise timing, how to let the FBI hear the words they needed to hear. But until the cuffs clicked, until Marcus looked up with that hollow, betrayed boy expression I used to soothe, I still felt a jolt of disbelief. My son had looked at me like I was an object he could set aside when it was no longer useful. "Mom," he mouthed once, as they led him past. Voice so small I almost didn't hear it. But I heard it. I heard everything. There was sorrow, brief, flinty, not repentance, not even contrition. He wanted me to feel something for him that he'd never offered me in return. After the arrests, The house felt empty in a different way. The halls were quiet because the vultures had been removed. The echo left behind was cleaner, less toxic. I moved through rooms, touching the things that were truly mine. James's old pipe resting on the mantel, the cricket trophy he'd won in high school, the tarnish on its brass, the framed photograph of our wedding, his arm around my shoulder. Small anchors that kept me tied to the life I had actually built, not to the ruin another generation attempted to make of it. The trials were a blur of testimony, evidence, and long, cold days waiting in hallways. People I'd never met, victims' families, other widows who'd thought themselves unlucky, came to watch as justice was finally shaped into something tangible. We read names into a record, Maria Rodriguez among them. Each name struck me like a bell. I sat through the proceedings and felt a fierce, steadying tide inside me. This was not merely vindication for my near death. This was a reckoning for dozens of others who never had a voice. Outside the courtroom windows, reporters chattered into microphones. Inside, Agent Martinez and Javier stood like solid pillars. I called them my family now. Miguel and Rosa visited often, Miguel bringing coffee, Rosa supplying casseroles that smelled like home. Little James Maria arrived with a shy, curious stare and latched himself to me like a tiny anchor. In his eyes I saw Maria's courage, not stolen but honored. He tugged on a corner of my sleeve, and I remembered that a life saved was worth every tactic, every risky step I'd taken. I turned the estate into a tool. James's fortune was no longer something to fear. It became a force for protection. Foundation grants funded legal clinics for elders, investigative task forces, safe houses like Rosa's. I created scholarships in Maria's name. I visited legislative hearings and watched as laws began to change. Stricter oversight on power of attorney abuses, mandatory training for judges and medical examiners in elder exploitation signs. The money, that was nearly the motive for murder, became armor for the vulnerable. Some nights I still wake in the dark, hand moving to the place where the compass necklace rests on my chest. I touch it and remember cold water, the smell of diesel, Miguel's weathered hands hauling me into a boat that smelled like a miracle. But most mornings I wake in light and laughter, small pancakes with a 5-year-old who thinks I am braver than anyone deserves to be. Marcus and Sophia sent letters from prison at first, pleas, excuses, attempts at manipulation. I keep them in a drawer I rarely open. They are evidence now, not epistles. Time and distance have done what forgiveness could not. My heart closed around a different truth. The son I'd raised is a man who chose darkness. I mourn that boy, but I do not mourn the loss of the man who betrayed me. The library where I volunteered now holds a plaque. In memory of those who trusted and were taken, may we always protect the trusting. Above it, I asked that Maria Rodriguez be honored. People come and read the stories. They leave notes and photographs. They bring flowers. They call the hotline and tell us their suspicions. We act. We stop another family from becoming a headline. If you asked me if I feel triumphant, I would say no. Triumphant sounds too gleeful for blood and loss. But I feel steady. I feel purposeful. I feel like I did when James and I first bought this house with money we'd earned in sweat and careful saving. I stand now on a foundation that is moral as well as financial. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, and the evening light catches the compass and throws a tiny star across the ceiling, I whisper to the room, "We did right, James," and I believe it.